So, today on the podcast, we continue our monthly series of news stories. Last week we had one long article that focused on how Universal was using its two soon-to-be-opened regional parks as a way of expanding its audience and likely taking some market share away from Disney. Today, we return to our news anthology format with 6 stories. We cover the American resorts. We explain how Disney typically uses discounts at their resort to expand their audience during times of economic uncertainty. We'll take a look at what is and what is not opening at the resorts as planned this summer. We'll look at the streaming service and we'll discuss what is and what is not working well with the Disney experiment of releasing 250% more big-budget family films from its core studios compared to the number they released last year. That is, we've got a lot to cover during this period now when Disney is moving toward a difficult economic outlook. But before I get to all of that, I need to thank another group of Bandcamp subscribers. We're an ad-free, listener-supported podcast. I am grateful for each and every person who supports us by joining our Bandcamp site, but today, an extra note of gratitude is going out to new subscribers: Larry, Mary, Brad, Josh, Amphigori, and JW. Thanks to each of you for supporting all we do here. And now, let's get into the show. This week in our first segment, we'll start out by taking a look at the company as a whole and then move on to other topics. Specifically, we'll look at what's working well for the Disney company overall and more pointedly, where the company is facing some serious problems. Also, how some of these problems are creating large discounts for consumers. It's probably no surprise that the Disney stock is again down under $100 per share. It's been a wild ride for the last 2 months on the stock market as the world looked toward the future with economic uncertainty and with some seeing a recession as a likely outcome. I should point out that I'm recording this a few days early this week, so my exact stock numbers are going to be a few days old. But the overall trend here are multi-month patterns. Before things started to go south again with the stock market on February 28th, the Disney stock was at $114 per share. And now it's presently at $84 per share. That's a 26% loss in a little less than 2 months. And no doubt part of this has to do with shifts in the overall market as consumers begin to worry about inflation and the effects of tariffs. But there's a difference in how the Dow overall is moving and how Disney specifically is moving. They're both moving down, but the depth of this swing is substantially larger for Disney. During this same period, from February 28th up through the present, the Dow was down 9.8%. This means that the Disney drop was over 2.5 times larger than that of the Dow overall. Disney often drops more than other indexes during periods of financial uncertainty. For example, at the start of the pandemic, Disney fell 42% compared to the 34% for the S&P 500. The percentage difference in the drop, though, this time is even larger. And there are some clear reasons for this. Disney is a company that relies heavily on household discretionary spending. In periods of economic uncertainty, families tend to prioritize essential purchases such as food, housing, education, transportation, and clothing, and they also limit discretionary spending, which affects a wide number of Disney offerings. Movies, streaming subscriptions, family vacations to resorts, cruise travel, and so on. Add in now 2 more elements to help explain the large drop. First, New Disney experiences rely heavily on some goods that are now facing tariffs, such as steel. Steel is essential to make cruise ships and to make new attraction areas in theme parks, such as the Tropical Americas expansion in Animal Kingdom and that Cars area over in the Magic Kingdom. With tariffs, the price tag for these projects just went up, even before any structures were built in either of those theme parks. Second, before this all happened, investors were already concerned that Walt Disney World and to a lesser extent Disneyland, which have both been company cash machines for years, have now priced out some potential customers, and along with this, investors are concerned that with lower capital investments in the parks, both Disney World and Disneyland have so few new attractions, specifically for 2025 and 2026, that it will see lower visitation numbers until new projects like Tropical Americas open in their parks. But Tropical Americas, the first big expansion area, is a minimum of 2 years away from opening. To be fair, you can also see this price weakness elsewhere in the travel sector, such as with airlines, and projections have been stepped down each month recently. Way back on March 12th, United CEO said that his company was seeing lower bookings in the consumer leisure market, which is industry speak for vacations. To put this simply, back at the beginning of March, the CEO for United Airlines indicated that most business travel was targeted at existing levels, whereas vacation travel was falling off. Around this same time, Southwest simply talked about a broad softness in their modeling for the near future. But then, a month later, during the first week of April, after the stock market began to fall, airline companies began to see lower demand across most sectors, not just leisure, but also business and government travel. Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian said that he has seen a reduction in broad consumer confidence and corporate confidence. This same exact trend is also happening in cruise lines. The Disney Cruise Line is simply part of the overall Disney company, and so its trends are a little more difficult to follow. But the stock for Viking Cruise Lines is down by 25%. Royal Caribbean is down by 29% from earlier this year, though the slightly higher percentage here might also be due to some recent health concerns for the Royal Caribbean ship line. And there's more here. For foreign-flagged cruise lines, the U.S. federal government has recently said that they will pursue higher federal tax rates. Most Disney ships are registered in Nassau, Bahamas. The one exception here is the Disney Adventure, which is expected to register later this year in Singapore. So there's another layer to the financial trouble here. One can reasonably assume that the Disney Cruise Line is facing similar problems, including a lower rate of future bookings. Disney does have one advantage not shared by Royal Caribbean and Viking. It can offer unsold cabins to its employees without creating a sale for the general public. Disney has 225,000 employees, which allows them many options for internal discounts without advertising steeply discounted rates to the general public. At times, Disney cast members can get a stateroom for under $80 a night, which is a fraction of what the public pays. So Disney can still fill its ships. The $80 or $100 per night likely covers operational costs as it relates to that one room, and Disney can preserve the premium pricing on public-facing websites. But the main financial concern, as I see it, is Disney World in Florida. Disney World has 30,000 hotel rooms. 30,000 hotel rooms and 4 large theme parks are simply a lot to fill every day. Here's how things are arranging themselves for the second half of 2025 in terms of the American parks. One factor that will help Disney World a little, but probably not enough to compensate for reduced domestic travel, is that the strength of the dollar has fallen significantly since the start of the year, particularly against the pound and the euro, which means that it will be less expensive for people on the other side of the Atlantic to visit Disney World than it was just a few months ago. But even with this, late summer on-property hotel rates are at multi-year lows right now. During the last week of August, I see some extremely low rates there, which means despite what the company might suggest publicly, Disney is seeing demand soften up a lot. For late August, here are some mid-week rates using one discounted tier tied either to annual pass holders, Disney Plus subscribers, Disney Visa holders, or a general stay longer discount. Animal Kingdom, a deluxe resort, is at $294 a night. Port Orleans, a moderate resort, is at $204 a night. Coronado Springs, a moderate, is at $191 a night. Pop Century, what I would describe as an upper-end value resort, is at $136 a night, and All-Star Sports, a value, is at $94 a night. In some cases, a few rooms are slightly cheaper during mid-July. On the dates that I checked, mid-July, I found that Coronado Springs drops down from $191 to $179 per night, and Port Orleans drops a little from $204 to $201 a night. But everything else on this list is less expensive in August than in July, in some cases substantially so. During previous cycles of low visitation, Disney has both shuttered some wings at its resorts, often Port Orleans Riverside and Caribbean Beach. Disney has also sold off some rooms at even lower per-night rates through Priceline and other online discount sites. I haven't seen either of these two things happening yet, but this might happen by July, August, or September, which are typically low visitation periods. Another factor in Disney's Florida troubles is that Epic Universe opens next month. And here's a surprising thing. There are still tickets available for Epic Universe's opening week. All opening week entry requires a multi-day ticket, but I'm surprised that these are still widely available. Epic is presently positioned to be Universal's flagship theme park, so more than any other financial indicator that tickets are widely available here suggests that there's going to be a very soft travel period as we move into summer. Out in California, Disneyland tends to weather financial downturns slightly better than Disney World. Both the Florida and the California resorts used discounting to attract customers during the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. But when families shift from vacations to staycations, Disneyland is better arranged to endure economic downturns. It's situated in a highly populated part of the country, making it perfect for staycations. There are about 20 million people who live close enough to Disneyland to make it a reasonable day trip by car without needing to get a hotel room, which limits the overall cost of a visit. Also, Disneyland has far less exposure to Disney-owned hotels. When Disney World shutters wings or sometimes entire resorts, Disneyland hotels generally stay open because there's so few of them. Disneyland has about 2,700 hotel rooms, including the DVC offerings, versus the 30,000 rooms in Florida. Disneyland is a much smaller resort, so small that many Disney World regulars are surprised by its size on their first visit. For those who have only visited Disney World but never Disneyland, maybe I should point out that you can actually walk a loop around all of the Disneyland resort hotels in about 8 or 9 minutes. At Disney World, it would take many bus transfers to visit all of the resort hotels. Anyway, there's less hotel exposure here for Disneyland, which means during peak economic periods, Disneyland sees a lot of potential income go to off-site hotels, but during economic downturns, it can simply adjust pricing and keep rooms full without much difficulty. During significant travel recessions, such as 2001, 2008, and 2020, there was no practical way to keep rooms full at Disney World, though Disney often gestures to investors that they are unlikely to discount premium products, such as tickets for Disney World. When the economy dips for months, Disney often does just that. They discount even key items such as tickets to fill their hotel rooms as much as they can. And that is what is happening here. Presently, you can combine the 50% off kids ticket offer for the summer with the $94 rate on all-star rooms in August. This is perhaps the most economical offer in years from Disney World. Beyond this, you can still visit a water park for free on your check-in day. You'd have to go back to pre-pandemic periods to see better pricing on these products. I should point out that Disney also offers a free dining offer through this period, but I've compared the different offers. It is substantially less expensive to take a room-only discount and the child's 50% off ticket offer, and then simply to buy the dining plan at full price on its own. But the overall takeaways from this segment are these. The overall financials for the company are not strong as we move into the summer, particularly for the Disney Experiences segment, which includes the parks and the cruise line. And because of soft demand, the Florida resort is offering some of the least expensive vacation options in more than a half dozen years. And there's more changes swirling around both the Florida and California resorts that might influence your decision to book a vacation there this year, but we're going to talk about those other items in just a bit. This segment, at least in the rough draft for the script this week, had the working title of Delays, which is probably more direct of a title than any I can think of now. The American Disney parks are looking at a rocky summer. We'll talk more about the economic situation in a few minutes, but in terms of attractions that drive attendance, some elements are coming online as planned while others aren't. Out in California, the original plan included a number of items mostly returning from previous years. A return of the Paint the Night Parade at Disneyland. The last time this parade was there was back in 2017, so 8 years ago. This parade started there in 2015 as part of the resort's 60th anniversary, and now it's back for the 70th. In terms of fireworks, Wondrous Journeys is returning. It's a solid show, but also the same show that was in the park last summer and the summer before. Disney will add 2 new characters from Coco, arranged in the style of Mary Blair, into It's a Small World, specifically Miguel and Dante. The Pixar Pals Better Together parade will return to DCA. This is the late afternoon parade that premiered there last summer. Also at DCA, Toy Story Mania will have some unique screen targets added to the attraction tied to Disney's 70th anniversary. I would expect that these targets would be minor adjustments to the 3D gaming presentation already embedded into the attraction. But the largest element and the only full attraction that was genuinely new for the summer of the 70th was a presentation of a Walt Disney animatronic scheduled for the Lincoln Theater. All of these attractions initially were supposed to come online starting May 16th, but the most significant of them, that is the Walt Disney animatronic, has now been bumped to July 17th, which is the 70th anniversary of Disneyland's opening, that press preview event back in 1955. Over in Florida, things are a little more complicated. The resort there is experiencing similar issues. Already, Disney World is facing some stiff competition from Universal once its new park, Epic Universe, opens on May 22nd. Due to some poor planning during the Bob Chapek years, Disney World has no new attractions of size to open this summer. For the last 2 years here on the podcast, we've discussed that the likely pivot is going to be either through the entertainment division, such as with new stage shows and parades, or through upgrades and rethemes to existing attractions. By the time Bob Iger became CEO again and got behind this problem, there was simply nothing to be done for the summer of 2025 and also for the summer of 2026. In terms of actual attractions of substance opening, the only one opening up is the redo of Test Track, which is often called Test Track 3.0. It's the third version of that attraction in the same show building. Initially, this was announced as a 2025 opening, with a lot of speculation that this could be used to help drive attendance during summer, but more recently Disney announced a late summer opening timeframe, and honestly, I can see this slipping to fall. October 1st, 2025 marks 3 important dates. It's the start of Disney's fiscal calendar, which means that any attendance bump from this attraction can be used to hopefully make 2026 look like a more prosperous year for the company, and also allow them to bury any not-so-great financial information in the current year. It's also the 54th anniversary of the opening of the Florida resort, which includes the Magic Kingdom, and it's the 43rd anniversary of the opening of Epcot, where this attraction is located. I can see a reasonable possibility now, where this rethemed attraction has a soft opening with test and adjust in late August or maybe September, and then officially opens on the 1st of October, so any increased traffic and any increased revenue then can go to prop up next year. That is, I can see a financial strategy in which Disney may want to save this attraction to support attendance for its 2026 fiscal year. Disney, like all publicly traded companies, is judged by investors on a year-over-year comparison. 2025 is already a lackluster year for the American parks, and it may be better to save Test Track for the 2026 year, which starts October 1st, in the hope of creating a more positive comparison year over year with next year's numbers. Anything Disney can do to increase visitation for 2026 will help this key marker when investors look at it. There will be a small wave of guests, no doubt, coming to Epcot to see the new Test Track when it opens, and if it opens on October 1st or later, it may slightly help Disney show improvements in a year-over-year comparison with fiscal year 2025, which ends September 30th. But again, that's only a guess. It could open a little earlier to make that late summer date. Also in Epcot, the new lounge at the back of the Spaceship Earth structure called Geo 82 is on track to open for the whole summer. I think we'll have an opening date announced very soon. My guess would be late May or possibly early June. The space is lovely and will have fantastic views out toward the lagoon. I've been up there before the retheme and am pretty sure that this will be a popular space. But also, a new lounge isn't a reason that a family in New York or Toronto books a trip to Orlando. Over in the Magic Kingdom, the largest new attraction is a nighttime parade called Disney Starlight, Dream the Night Away, which is designed to be the descendant of the Main Street Electrical Parade and SpectroMagic. Again, this was initially intended to be part of the lineup for the entire summer. It's been nearly a decade since the Magic Kingdom had a regular nighttime parade outside of those special party events for Halloween and Christmas, and it's been over 25 years since this park has had a brand new nighttime parade. The vibe in the Magic Kingdom, in my opinion, is different without a nighttime parade. A parade tends to unite the crowd, allows the energy of the event to grow, and usually creates far better group energy and dynamics than what Main Street presently holds at night, which is mostly shopping, a little dining, and people walking toward the exit. Units in the new parade clearly gesture to the original Main Street Electrical Parade. It will open with a Blue Fairy unit, similar to the Main Street Electrical Parade. It will have a Peter Pan unit, just like the original Electrical Parade, but from there, the units will slant far more toward recent Disney and Pixar features. From what we know now, there will be a Frozen 2 unit, an Encanto unit, a Moana unit, a Coco unit, a unit somewhat surprisingly based on the late 2023 film Wish. And right here, I feel compelled to go off on a little side tangent on how odd this choice is, considering the film significantly underperformed at the box office, received mostly mixed reviews, and never became much of a hit on the streaming service. This will be a float where the vast majority of the audience knows neither the name of the female protagonist nor her goat, both of which are prominently featured on the float. My guess is that this float was designed and ordered before the film was released, which mostly highlights the big gap between internal expectations for this film and its actual performance. But back to the parade. There will also be a unit that collectively features multiple princesses, which has become a staple in Disney park parades and is also a waltzing callback to the original Main Street Electrical Parade. I've also been told that there will be more units beyond what has been publicly revealed. And my guess here is that the publicly revealed floats are the ones that are most certainly done. The parade was originally announced for summer 2025, but has since been slightly delayed. There's been a cast party, which typically moves forward to rehearsals outside of the park, and this usually means working out the choreography for various parade units in a dance studio or other out-of-park areas. Peter Pan and Wendy will be rigged with a harness system so they can fly. This specifically will take some time to work out for a moving float. Ideally, there should be some late-night rehearsals at the Magic Kingdom with all parade units in late May or maybe June, typically a couple hours after the park closes to the public. So if you have a theme park facing room in Bay Lake Tower, make sure to look out your window sometime in June and see what you can spot over by Main Street. I've heard that Disney has already tested a couple of floats in the park. This is likely to check clearances and turns and maybe how the technology works actually in the park. After the choreography is worked out, after there are weeks of late-night rehearsals in the park, there will likely be a dress rehearsal that cast members can attend. From friends who are cast members, I've heard that a July opening is likely, but at this point, without in-park rehearsals to truly test everything, take all of that with a grain of salt. But missing the late May or early June kickoff for the parade creates another string of issues. One of them is that the popular summer season at Disney World typically winds down around the end of July. Schools on the West Coast, particularly colleges on the quarter system, start later than those on the East Coast, and this extends Disneyland summer farther than Disney World summer. And even if there are still summer crowds in the Magic Kingdom in August, Disney has another issue with rolling out the parade then. That is the usual lineup of Mickey's Not So Scary parties that typically close the park to regular guests around 6 p.m. The Halloween party already has its own entertainment on Main Street and won't use this parade. Though dates haven't yet been announced for this year's Halloween parties, last year they started on August 9th. There were only a few in August, specifically 7, but there were 13 in September and 17 in October. And based on the parties selling out yet again last year, I would expect a few more dates to be added this year. In other words, the Magic Kingdom won't be able to host this parade, even though it's brand new, on half of the nights in September and October. So there's going to be some very tricky scheduling going on here and a rush to put this parade in the park as soon as possible. Again, my guess is for a July premiere, and if there are technology issues with certain float units, I can see a scenario in which some elements aren't in the parade when it premieres, but are added in as Disney feels they are ready. So in terms of scheduling, the parade will miss the kickoff for summer, and as there's no firm premiere date even now, guests have no idea when it will really run, which means that likely they won't book a speculative trip to Florida just in case it opens. And by the time the premiere date for the parade is announced, most every family will already have their summer vacation plans firmed up, perhaps for other things. And add into this again that running this parade regularly becomes significantly trickier once we hit Halloween party season. And so what does this leave for Disney to build a promotional campaign around with elements that definitely will be in the Florida parks by Memorial Day? It leaves basically 2 stage shows, both over in Hollywood Studios. There's a revamped version of the Little Mermaid stage show with a refurbished theater, new props, new puppets, a new musical number, and a new closing sequence. There's also that villain show called Unfairly Ever After. Mermaid, I'm sure, will again skew toward younger guests, and I'm not exactly sure where the villain show will land. The preview videos that Disney has released suggest that it's campy, not overly scary, but with some strong visual effects. This show almost surely, at least initially, will get longer lines than Mermaid. But even if both shows turn out to be well done, if they are Broadway caliber, this will still be very little around which to build a summer promotion. And there's another troubling element here. The wow factor for the summer was going to be the new parade. That will show up at some point, but without that, the 2 stage shows at Hollywood Studios are surely going to be compared to the 2 stage shows that are opening over at Epic Universe. I haven't seen them yet, but from talking with team members over at Universal, I expect them to be very well done with some amazing effects. One of them will be in the new Harry Potter area, the other on the Isle of Berk. And without the parade to help buffer Disney's summer, I think that some of the comparisons between the 2 resorts, which are surely coming, are not going to fall Disney's way in the next couple of months. But again, this is only speculation, and also, as we all know, there's interesting things on the horizon. Now let's check in with theatrical films. In terms of Disney's studio releases, 2025 has gone pretty much as we predicted last year. There's been no surprises, at least so far, for the year. Disney started its year with what will likely be its 2 weakest films for the entire year. We predicted that Captain America wasn't going to be the film that rebuilt the MCU toward wide public interest. The film has been in theaters now for over 2 months. The box office is presently at $414 million worldwide. It cost around $180 million to make, plus marketing costs. As Disney splits box office revenue with theaters, this film will likely need to make over $500 million to break even just from the box office numbers. There's little chance now that this film will do that, but after video on demand and streaming, the film will probably show a small profit. But this is never a studio's best plan when looking at how a film performs. The other film is Snow White. I enjoyed Snow White, but also I saw it in a theater with 7 other people. It did have some noticeable weaknesses. The 1990s Broadway-style songs didn't match the songs that they reused from the 1937 film. The CGI characters didn't match the human characters in terms of movement or appearance, and the 2 modes of what I will call film expression here, some of it held over from the original, some of it added for the recent 2025 release, didn't always match up either. I think some of what has been lost here is a firm understanding of the context for the original Snow White and what made it a success back in the late 1930s. When Snow White went into production, there were no other full-length Technicolor features released or even in production. The first full-length Technicolor feature was Becky Sharp, released in 1935, and by 1937, when Snow White was released, there were still very few Technicolor features in theaters, with the vast majority of Hollywood films still being offered in black and white. Part of the draw of Snow White back then was a 2-hour presentation of vibrant color, and specifically painted color. The other element that has been lost is the spectacle of sound and dance for its own sake. In 1937, simply seeing hand-drawn characters move, dance, and sing was still part of the spectacle and draw of the cinema. Think of it this way. If you can remember back to 1993, over 30 years ago, when the first Jurassic Park was released, part of the draw of that film was seeing all those CGI dinosaurs move across the screen. There are some very lengthy shots in that film simply showing off the CGI technology and the wonders of visually realistic dinosaurs moving as believable creatures. Those lengthy shots, I think, are pretty dull now, especially for kids. In a world where kids can create CGI characters on their laptops and phones. So, a large part of Snow White back when it was released was the presentation of color and the joy that came from musical expression through song and dance for its own sake. That's no longer the center of film narratives, particularly with musicals. Film narratives now are far more focused on character development, particularly through song in musicals, complex plots, and the spectacle of unique computer-generated sequences. So this new version of Snow White has some sequences that rely on the 1937 understanding of music and dance for its own sake, musical numbers that don't advance the plot or deepen characterization, and also has other sequences where music is used in a far more contemporary way to advance narrative, such as in modern Broadway musicals. The styles here are a bit jumbled and never really coalesce into a film with a unified vision for what it wants to deliver to an audience. I should point out there are some engaging musical numbers and a compelling visual design throughout the film, and if you haven't seen it, I think it will be an enjoyable night for you once it arrives on Disney+. Regardless, though, Snow White is the film that since last year we've been predicting would be the largest weak point for Disney's theatrical releases for 2025. We've said that this was the film that Disney simply wanted to move past. Almost every significant indicator suggested that Disney knew that this film wasn't going to do well in theaters. After rewrites, various changes, and an interrupted shooting schedule due to COVID, the film cost about $210 million to make, plus marketing costs. It will need to make around $600 million to break even. After being in theaters for over a month, Snow White presently has made $194 million. At this point, this film will almost certainly end at a loss. On the horizon, though, is Marvel's The Thunderbolts. This is the story of a group of supervillains who band together to become superheroes for hire, essentially mercenaries with superpowers. I've said before that with an estimated budget of around $175 million, I think this is an interesting but somewhat risky release. I don't think that this film either will be the one to rejuvenate the MCU brand in 2025. I'm betting that will be Fantastic Four later this summer. But I think this film will perform better than Brave New World, in part because it's a story with a fresh start that doesn't present itself as the continuation of multiple previous films and previous streaming projects. Then, after that, we have the live-action version of Lilo and Stitch, which I think will perform well. This film will have a nostalgia element for those who loved the original, released now about 23 years ago, and Stitch is a character who plays well both to kids and adults. There are a couple of other soft spots in Disney's lineup later this year, but I do think the two big films for spring, Thunderbolts and Stitch, should play better than the two big films for winter, Snow White and Brave New World. The big question, though, that Disney is testing all year is this: will a larger list of theatrical films bring out more people to the movies, even if those are the same group of people seeing more films? Or is there now an upper-level ceiling on how many tickets theaters can sell to a post-COVID audience when that same audience now has deep options at home through streaming? Last year, from its core studios, Disney had just 4 major releases. This year it has 10. And that's the experiment. I've already suggested that I think there's likely a lower cap to the overall number of tickets theaters can sell now, and at least over the first 4 months of 2025, nothing has changed my opinion here. It is, though, an interesting experiment because the results of this will give Disney guidance moving forward as to how many movies it can effectively release each year. And let's add in one more unexpected wrinkle to all this. Back on April 10th, Chinese officials announced that they would reduce the number of U.S. films they allowed to be shown in their country, specifically as a very public way to demonstrate their discontent with American tariffs. And the Chinese box office can be a significant part of the overall revenue for some Disney films. Endgame, for example, took in $632 million in China, Zootopia took in $236 million, Infinity War took in $359 million, and Avatar 2: The Way of Water took in $245 million. For some films with middling box office, China can be the difference between making money and losing money. So this is another element that might cause Disney to rethink how many big-budget tentpole films it can successfully release each year. In summer, when more of these films drop, we'll probably have a better idea if a larger slate of Disney films will bring in more revenue and ideally more profit, or if a larger slate of films is simply going to further subdivide the existing theatrical audience and also reduce income per picture, especially as China might now be partially out of the American film business. But now let's touch bases with streaming. The overall tone and direction of the revamped Disney streamer is continuing mostly as we discussed earlier this year. Iger's vision for Disney Plus is for lower-priced content and as a vault for theatrical films once their theatrical window closes and after they've spent a few weeks as VOD titles. So in the middle of March, Moana 2 showed up on Disney Plus after first appearing in theaters in late November, nearly 4 months after its initial theatrical release. And the lead original program for March and April has been Daredevil Born Again, which has a rumored production budget of between $60 and $80 million for the 9-part series, which, as we've pointed out before, is a far, far cry from the reported $225 million for WandaVision. I will say that Daredevil Born Again is the best original I've seen on Disney Plus for a while. It's a continuation of the Daredevil series that originated many years ago on Netflix, so if you aren't familiar with the series and the characters, give yourself 2 or 3 episodes and you'll quickly see how everything connects together. The series gets its name from perhaps the most famous story in the Daredevil comics, Born Again from Frank Miller in the mid-1980s. But the stories in the Disney Plus Born Again series are far more connected to more recent Daredevil story arcs in the comics, mostly from the last 10 years. It's a solid series. It focuses mostly on action, relationships, and stunts, and has minimal special effects. But this mixture works well here, building to a strong close. Perhaps the best close for any Marvel series on Disney Plus, except for WandaVision and the 2 Loki miniseries. I should warn parents, though, that the graphic violence, especially for the final 2 episodes, is beyond anything that perhaps has been presented in previous Marvel miniseries on Disney+. I would preview this, especially the final 2 episodes, before allowing children, let's say 13 and under, to watch it. But if you like Daredevil Born Again, and I think you will, there's already a 2nd season of Daredevil in the works for the streamer. Beyond Marvel, Disney Animation has now shelved plans to produce a limited series called Tiana, which would have furthered the story started in Princess and the Frog. This is to fit the company's new streaming profile, which places premium animation products first into theaters and then later switches them over to Disney+. Disney Animation has already said that they are no longer planning to make any long-form animation for the streamer, but they will still create occasional short-form specials, such as the Zootopia Plus shorts that were mostly 10 to 12 minutes each. Lucasfilm still has one last big-budget production to release on Disney+, which is Andor 2. The reported cost for this production, and by that I mean just the 2nd season of Andor, is $290 million. But this project was greenlit and put into production back when Chapek was CEO. Ironically, Andor 2 started filming one day after Chapek was fired, but that it was already filming, with the stars under contract, likely saved it from any further cuts. So as Andor 2 plays this spring, make sure to savor it. I don't know of any other Disney Plus originals in production now that has a budget anywhere close to that of Andor 2. But overall, Iger's somewhat reduced vision of Disney Plus, as opposed to that of Chapek, who saw Disney Plus as a place for weekly entertainment of quality comparable to that of theatrical releases, looks far more sustainable, at least to me. Or to put it simply, it may be a little more difficult now to attract new subscribers based on the wow factor of Disney Plus originals, but the more financially responsible content means that the streamer should continue to make a profit. The growth areas now, I think, are mostly in the international markets. So I would expect slower subscription growth, but also some better overall financials within the unit. And in terms of company value, I think these adjustments are an overall win for Disney as a company, but maybe a little less of a win for Disney fans. Back in our first segment today, we talked about the changing economic landscape for the American Disney parks moving forward through 2025. And in this segment, I want to move some of that conversation a little more forward. Specifically, I want to break down Disney's marketing strategy a little more so we can see how all of this is working and have a reasonable sense of what I believe are the underlying company goals. And this has to do with how does Disney fill their resorts both in California and Florida. I should start with this. No Disney park experience is inexpensive. But the California and Florida resorts have different customer and marketing profiles. Disneyland, because it can easily be a single-day park, typically has a far greater mix of guests from different economic backgrounds. At Disneyland, a Southern California local driving in can buy a one-day ticket for $104 on the park's least expensive days. Parking is $40, but if you drive in with a family or a group of four, it's $10 each. The most common number of guests in a car, though, is 2. So let's say on average, $20 per person for parking. It's also possible to bring some snacks and a refillable water bottle, but it's also unrealistic, I think, to believe that most budget-focused visitors won't buy a meal or a snack while in the park. So let's add in $25 for a quick service meal and $8 for a snack, which would cover ice cream, a churro, Dole Whip, as well as healthier options such as trail mix or fruit. If a visitor kept to these charges, a day at Disneyland would cost about $157. An average American family spends between about 5 to 6% of their net income on a yearly vacation. We'll use 5.5% in our calculations here. America is a country that has extreme highs and extreme lows in family income. But even with that, I think about 80% of families in Southern California could spend one day of their vacation at Disneyland if it was a priority for them without the experience becoming a financial hardship. This means that Disney can market widely to Southern California locals, and they do just this. Disney World is far more tricky. And when people generally complain about the overall cost of visiting Disney, they usually mean Disney World and not Disneyland, though admittedly both are upper-end entertainment options. The average visiting group to Disney World is 3 people. So, for our Florida example, we'll use a family of 3, 2 adults and 1 child under the age of 10. Again, we'll look at some more budget-focused options. We'll also assume that this family flies to Orlando. Let's say that their stay is 5 days, 4 nights. And we'll say that for each full day, they will have 1 table service meal, 1 counter service meal, and 2 light snacks, which can include a muffin, a croissant, or a cinnamon roll for breakfast. We'll also assume that there's no rental car, but they will take Mears Connect from the airport to the resort and back. They will stay at the All-Stars, and they will have a non-discounted 4-day non-park hopper ticket to the parks. And they will visit midweek, early December, which is a non-peak period of visitation. They will fly for, let's say, $300 each, and in their home city, they will leave their car at the airport, and there's a small charge for parking there. They will not use lightning lanes, and we'll add in a souvenirs and extras budget of, let's say, $250. This brings the total cost of that 5-day, 4-night trip to $5,160. To trim it down, the family could do all quick service meals, which would reduce it to $4,736. Using that 5.5% figure of annual household income, this vacation is affordable to those in the top 35% of American households. But also, this is not exactly how Disney markets itself. It tends to market the resort to slightly higher income levels who will purchase more extras. Let's change 3 elements in our initial equation. First, we'll extend the vacation from 4 nights to 5, which is more common. We'll upgrade their room from the All-Stars to Caribbean Beach, a moderate hotel with a standard view, and we'll add 2 days of Lightning Lane multi-pass, one for the Magic Kingdom, one for Hollywood Studios. In my opinion, Lightning Lane is far less important at Epcot or Animal Kingdom. This brings the total to $7,167, a very nice vacation. And again, using that 5.5% figure, this means that this vacation is affordable to families whose income is in the top 28% of American households. And this is generally where Disney World, as opposed to Disneyland, focuses its marketing. And when families are confident in the economy, and when Disney has new attractions or lands such as Galaxy's Edge that the public wants to see, Disney can usually fill its Florida parks and hotel rooms by primarily focusing on families whose income is in the top 35% or perhaps even the top 28% of household incomes nationwide. But right now, many families are not confident in the economy going forward, and also Disney has no new lands or attractions of substance to entice guests. Also, Disney is losing some of its regular guests to Universal, who has a new theme park this summer. So, in light of this, Disney is using discounts to accomplish at least 3 significant marketing and resort goals. Again, there's those 30,000 hotel rooms and 4 theme parks to fill. With those current discounts this coming summer, that 6-day, 5-night vacation at Caribbean Beach, as described above, suddenly drops down to $6,069, which makes it affordable for the top 37% of American households. And that 5-day, 4-night vacation at the All-Stars drops down to $3,763, with everything including airfare, airport parking, Mears Connect, meals, and so on. Again, using the same calculations, that is now affordable for the top 57% of American households. 3 significant things are happening with this discounting model. First, when Disney can't fill rooms with its usual demographic, typically those in the top 30% of American households, it starts marketing to households in lower percentiles of overall income. In these equations, using the current discounts, Disney has broadened its target range from the top 30 or 35% down to the top 57%. In other words, when there isn't enough interest in going to Disney in the top 30 or so percent of households based on income, Disney tries to replace some of their usual clientele with guests from lower income brackets, which requires discounting. Second, lowering prices for a group of key Disney fans will produce repeat visits. Deep Disney fans might go once a year or every other year to Disney World, but if prices as above fall by about 26%, it will then produce some repeat business. That group of key Disney fans, or at least some of them now, might visit every year instead of every other year, or might even go twice a year. Lastly, the lower price level, particularly with the hotels, encourages guests, even if they aren't in the parks every day, to book a longer vacation. To add a single day, including hotel costs, meals, and snacks for that family on the All-Stars vacation, it is $373 per day, Or to put it this way, to increase that vacation by 25% in terms of length of stay, it adds only 10% to the total cost. But here's the big thing. Even with Disney looking at the top 57% of households instead of just the top 30 or 35%, I don't think the current discounts are going to fill the resort, particularly in late August, all of September except for Labor Day weekend, the first half of November, and the first half of December. There's simply too many negatives in play right now, specifically the uncertain economic outlook, the lack of new attractions or new land, which are the largest drivers of attendance, and Epic Universe opening across town, which will attract some usual Orlando guests over there. At the moment, I think Disney is testing the waters to see how many rooms the current discounts can fill. But I would also expect there to be another wave of slightly better discounts for the fall. So if you are a value-conscious traveler, I think that there are presently some good deals for late summer and fall. You might want to book one of these packages if you're interested in going to Disney World, but also be aware of any cancellation deadlines in case another wave of better discounts comes along, which I really do think is likely. Again, Disneyland is going to be just fine. It will adjust ticket and hotel prices and will reasonably fill the resort without that much trouble. Disney World, on the other hand, is moving through a period where it's trying to figure out exactly how much discounting is going to be necessary to reasonably fill those 30,000 hotel rooms and the 4 parks. And with the current discounts as good as they are, I don't think we're really in the right place yet, where Disney will fill their resort to levels that they find satisfactory. Now I know there's still a few more interesting stories swirling around out there. I do have some updates for construction projects both at Disney World and Disneyland. I want to talk to a couple of people before I put those news stories here, and also some of these projects, I can tell you, are becoming more complicated, as there will now likely be tariffs not only on raw materials such as steel, but also for ride systems that come from international companies, which is part of Disney's at least current plan, particularly for the Florida expansion. All of these elements add substantial costs to already proposed budgets. The Animal Kingdom project is already moving forward. At least the Cars Land project in the Magic Kingdom in some form will likely move forward, as will the Monsters Incorporated land in Hollywood Studios, as I believe that there's already an agreement for an outside company to create the ride elements for that expansion. But beyond this, it's getting tricky. This is one of the stories I want to talk about next time we have a news episode. And beyond that, there's some interesting movements in terms of Netflix and regional installations in America, and also how Six Flags wants to redo its profile of American parks, both of which will affect Disney. But these are stories that we will explore next time we dip down into one of our news episodes. I'll be back next week with a new episode. The plan right now is to move back into our history-focused series on Mary Blair, as we haven't touched down there in a little bit. But next time we get to a news episode, we still have a lot to talk about. Lastly, as you know, we're an ad-free, listener-supported podcast. We do just 2 things: deep dives on stories related to the history of the Disney Studio and the parks, and news and analysis of current events as they relate to the Disney Company. We are funded entirely by listener contributions, specifically by listeners who join us over on Bandcamp as monthly subscribers. On Bandcamp, you will find over 300 episodes not available on iTunes or anywhere else. But the best reason to join us there is to support the work we do here And to make sure that this podcast continues to exist, you can support us by becoming a monthly subscriber at dhipodcast.bandcamp.com. I'll also leave a link down in our show notes. So, until next Sunday, this is Todd James Pierce.